KPM.
Miss Renuka, I think I'm hearing a whisper from the call.
Call?
There it is again. Can you hear that?
No, Shafika, I can't hear anything.
Oh wait, it's doing it again. There's the sound. It's a faint but strong whisper. Try to listen very carefully, Miss Renuka. Can you hear that?
Yeah, it's getting
Right?
louder and it's not really a whisper, it's getting to be something
Yes.
a little bit louder, Shafika.
Yes, you're right. But Miss Renuka, how can that happen? How can calls have whispers?
It's more than a whisper, it sounds like as though it's saying something to us.
Yes, I believe it's like trying to say something. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, my friends. How are you all today? I'm Shafika Farahin Razali with you for the whole of 1 hour, and we'll be learning English literature with our very special guest today. But before that, as usual, I hope you all are doing very fine due to the ease of restrictions nowadays. I hope you still are managing your SOP well, doing your hygiene, washing your hands frequently, wearing your mask, face mask, and also maintain a social distance of at least 1 meter between you and people around you. Okay, today's lesson is going to be very interesting because we're going to learn about poetry. But as you can see just now on our profile, we've seen who our teacher is. That is our very own Miss Renuka. Miss Renuka, how are you?
I'm good, Shafika.
You're
And you?
I'm very good today. Thank you for that. And you're looking very dapper and lovely today.
Thank you, Shafika. Lovely
Well-
words.
Well, Ms. Renuka, actually for our viewers, perhaps they may not know you very well. You can introduce yourself first.
Yeah, okay. I'm Renuka and I teach at SMK Perempuan Methodist, Klang, yeah? And
Right.
I have been teaching, I think, 35 years.
Wow, 35
Right.
years is a very long time. I hear that your students are very lovely students as well today with us. But before we start our lesson, Ms. Renuka, as usual, we practice our SOP in the studio. I invite you to wear our hand sanitizer placed in front of us to practice the hygiene and maintain our SOP. Okay, Ms. Renuka, as I've said previously, we're not alone, not just the two of us today, but we have gonna have our pupils with us from SMK Convent Klang Selangor. Hello pupils, can we have them on the screen here? Wow, everyone is looking super cheerful today. Are you excited to learn our lesson today? Please give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So we'd like to know one of you, one by one. So let's have first Hani. Can you introduce yourself and perhaps your ambition?
Hi, I'm Hani and my ambition is to be a surgeon.
All right, Hani. Okay, that's great. A surgeon, Miss Renuka. Very ambitious. I hope all the best for you, okay, Hani? Next, can we have Tushanti. Hi, Tushanti.
Hi, I'm Vishanti and I want to be an accountant in the future.
Okay, all the best to you too. That's a very ambitious ambition, but I love that. Okay, next, can we have Anusha, please? Hi.
Hi, my name's Anusha and I would like to become a dentist one day.
Oh, wow, a dentist. Okay, that's very great. All the best to you too. And next, can we have Ashley? Hi, Ashley.
Hi, my name is Ashley and my ambition is to be an accountant one day.
An accountant as well, the same as Tushanti. All right, thank you. Next, can we have Vaishali? Did I pronounce your name correctly? Hello.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
My name is Vaishali and my ambition is to be a doctor.
A doctor. Okay, all right. All the best to you, okay? Work smart. Okay, thank you, Vaishali. And next, last but not least, can we have Sharmila, please?
Hi, I'm Sharmila, and I want to become an anesthesiologist.
Oh, anesthesian. Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, thank you, Sharmila. Good luck to you too. Okay, pupils, thank you for introducing yourself. Now, Miss Renuka, I've heard today's topic is involving one of the difficult poems, which is entitled Minors.
Right.
Perhaps from our gimmick just now, our short sketch, you can detail us a bit on what it relates to the calls and today's topic, which is poetry minors.
Okay, all right, Shafika. Yes, I do agree. It is one of, it's actually a beautiful poem, yeah, but a lot of images there which sometimes make us wonder what exactly this poem is about. Yeah. Now, as most of you would have seen just now, the gimmick that we did was something very simple, whereby we thought that we would bring the coals alive, and it was as if the coals were telling a story to us.
Yes, it was whispering and trying to tell us something.
Yes, exactly. And that's exactly what we will see in the first three stanzas, whereby we will see how the coals are telling us a story of a time long, long, long ago.
Ah, when was that time, Miss Renuka?
Oh, long before you and I were born.
Okay.
Long before our grandparents were born. Long before men traversed on earth.
That's where poems bring these stories alive until now.
Exactly.
It's very
Right.
interesting that what you've mentioned to us just now. So what I'm understanding is that the poem is from the point of view of the coals.
Initially, it starts with the coals, and then later on, the poet himself comes in and he talks about his experiences as a soldier, and he draws parallels with the miners.
Wow, what an interesting topic to learn today. I'm very excited to learn. I'm pretty sure our pupils online are very excited to learn. But as usual, we're going to take a short break first, and then we'll come back with the lesson for today's topic, which is poetry minors. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back on Slot Menengah Atas.
TV KPM. Didik TV KPM.
Okay, pupils, let's come back to class. We're learning for our upper secondary level slot today with English literature with our very lovely English literature teacher, Miss Renuka. And today's topic is poetry minors. That means there's going to be a story to tell. There's going to be a lot of interesting facts to focus on. And then after that, we can make some evaluation from the poem. And as Miss Renuka has mentioned, it's one of the most difficult poems to understand and comprehend actually. So please stay focused. And pupils online, are you ready to learn today? Can you please give me a double thumbs up? Okay, great. All right, let's start, Miss Renuka.
All right, thank you, Shafika. All right, now as Shafika has already introduced, what we are going to look at today is we are going to look at the poem Minors, written by Wilfred Owen. Now, before we go into the poem, let's look at the focus areas for today's lesson. Yeah. First of all, we shall look at the background of the poet as well as the poem. And from that, we will move on into the poem proper, whereby we will analyze the poem. We shall look at how words make a difference in a poem. We shall look at how literary devices, poetic devices, are used by the writer to make this an interesting piece. Okay, and after we have analyzed the poem, we shall do a little bit of assessment.
Right.
Yeah. And assessment is going to be not just classroom based, it will also deal with questions which might come out for the SPM. So these are the areas that we would look at in the poem minus by Wilfred Owen. Okay, right. Now, before we go further, girls, I would like to pose this question to you. Now, you can see pictures here of the coal mines, yeah? And these coal mines were in the early 20th century. And at that same time, there are other pictures here which show us the World War I underground tunnels.
Wow.
Yeah? Remember, the First World War was between the years of 1914 to 1918. Now, what are some of the similarities that you can see between the coal mines, and the underground tunnels of the First World War? Is there anyone who would like to give me a response?
All right, I think I know, but I think the students are ready as well. Sharmila?
Okay, Sharmila, good. I like to see your hand raised. Okay,
Yes.
Sharmila, what do you find similar between the two?
It is narrow where there is hardly any space to move.
Okay, very good, Sharmila. Good response. Anyone else? What else can you find between these? Yes, Anusha.
Okay, Anusha.
The tunnels are rather dark and deep.
Okay, dark, deep, narrow. Okay, Vaishali, what about you?
It gives a feeling of stuffiness.
Okay, so, you know, whoever is there within these tunnels and pits,
Yes.
you know, they would feel rather stuffy. Excellent answers, girls. Okay, so what you can see here is a similarity between the coal mines in the years, you know, the early 20th century,
Right.
as well as the period of war during the First World War, when a lot of underground tunnels were built. Okay,
Right.
so the similarities, you know, in terms of narrowness, the depth, yeah, the stuffiness, the darkness. Can you imagine the feelings of those who had to work in these places, Shafika?
Yes, I cannot. Actually, I can understand. Being underground itself is very hot, and the stuffiness, like our pupils mentioned, and even being a soldier on top of the surface is not comfortable as well.
Yes, it is not at all comfortable, and it is like us saying death is staring us in the face.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So with that, let me introduce this poem. If you look at this poem, minus, you notice that there are 8 stanzas here. And the first 7 stanzas are of 4 lines each. Now, each stanza is known as a quatrain because there are 4 lines. But what's different here is the last stanza has got 6 lines. Okay? Girls, is there anyone who can tell me why do you think that the last stanza has got 6 lines?
Okay, who would
It's
like
your
to try?
own interpretation. Yes, honey.
It is to show that the pain and suffering is an ongoing process and there will be no stop to it. It has happened in the past and it will never stop.
All right, beautiful, wonderful answer. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, you know, that's how human lives are. Yeah, we never stop in our pain and suffering, and it is an ongoing process, something which continues. So that could be a reason why this poet has used 6 lines in the last stanza as compared to the other stanzas. Okay,
Right.
all right. Now, as I said, in poetry, there is no right, there is no wrong, as long as you can support it with evidence.
Right.
So now let's look. We shall start by looking at the poet's background first. Wilfred Owen, he lived between the years of 1893 to 1918, which means he died at a very young age. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, Shafika,
Yes.
Wilfred Owen was a soldier.
He was a soldier.
He was a soldier. So can you guess why in 1918 he passed away?
1918, he must have been killed in World War I.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent answer. Yes, he was killed in the war. Okay, and this poem was written somewhere in the beginning of 1918, where during a period of time whereby Wilfred Owen was sent back to England from the Western Front because he was injured.
Right.
And during this period of time when he was in the hospital, he had horrific nightmares. And these horrific nightmares are actually a symptom of shell shock. In fact, many soldiers who went through this stage, many of them went through shell shock. Okay, so if you read Wilfred Owen's poems, his poems mainly deal with the horrific nightmares that he had. And in this poem, one of the images that he brings out is the image of the mines and how the miners are dying in the mines. And this is, I would say, typical of Wilfred Owen's image of the mouth of hell. See, the mines were symbolic of the mouth of hell. And the miners were the victims of this.
I see.
Right. The period of time during the First World War, and when exactly and what exactly made him write this was actually the Coriary Disaster at Staffordshire on 12th January 1918, a real incident. And in this incident, there were 248 people in the mines on that day. And out of this total, 155 of them died, of which 44 were below the age of 16. So can you imagine how it would have been like in the mine? Horrible.
Because it's not ideal at all for an adult, let alone a youngster who's just developing, I don't know, getting into adulthood and trying to survive in the heat and in the stuffiness and the
breathing
narrowness.
in the gases.
Breathing the gases
breathing
as well.
in the gases. So don't you think you can see some similarity between these miners and the soldiers who were caught in war when explosions happened?
Right, definitely. There's got to be a trauma there that you cannot forget. Like you said, shell shock. Even miners experience the shell shock as well.
Right, exactly. Very good. Okay, all right?
Right.
Yes, so that's what we see in the background. Now we are going to look into the poem. So what are we going to look at into the poem? You will notice that this poem actually has got 3 phases. And these 3 phases are with reference to the period of time. In the first phase, we start off with the poet sitting in front of the hearth, the fireplace, looking into the fireplace, and he hears whispers. And it is as if he is hearing the whispers made by the coals, which are there to tell him a story of their formation years and centuries and years and years and years ago, before there were even animals and humans on earth.
Wow, so the coals must have witnessed so much.
Yes, exactly. And we know that coal is formed from decaying vegetation. And even we decayed, bones of animals and so on. So can you imagine how many centuries it would have taken for the coal to be formed? So as he sits there and he listens to these whispers, he thinks that maybe the coal is going to tell him a story of their formation. However, along the way, the tone changes when he says, the coals are not really telling me a story of how they were formed. They are actually telling me a story of what they saw in the mines. Okay, so you see that period of time shifts. From the present, it goes to the past. And from the past, it comes back to the present, and he draws a parallel between the miners as well as the soldiers, of which he was one of them. And he moves on from here into the future, and he says, whoever is enjoying himself in the future is because of what we had sacrificed.
Yes, for the comfort. The miners sacrificed for the comfort of the people. The soldiers sacrificed for the peace.
Exactly. Very good. I like that insight. Miners for future comfort. Soldiers for future peace. Okay. So once you get this idea, the poem becomes simple to understand. Okay. All right. So let's look at stanza 1. There was a whispering in my hearth, a sigh of the coal, grown wistful of a former earth, it might recall. So what do we have here? We have the setting here in which the speaker is in front of the hearth, and it seems as if he is in a reverie, thinking of the past, listening to the coals. Now, the interesting part here is that the coals now begin to have a voice. And this is what we say in literature, we call it personification.
Personification.
Yes, the coal is given a human quality. And how do we see the human quality which has been given in the coal? Girls, can you give me some responses? What words tell us that the coal has been personified? Yes, Tushanti.
All right.
The words such as whispering, sigh, and wistful gives us an insight of how the coal feels sorrow when recalling its past.
Okay, I just asked you for words, but you've given me more
The
than
whole
that.
thing.
And that's wonderful, Tushanti. So we see how the coal has been personified through the use of words like sigh, how it has grown wistful through the use of the word whisper, whispering, So we can see here the coal has been given a human quality, as now the coal seems to be having a voice as it tells a story of the past. Okay?
Right.
All right. So
Okay.
what we have here is exactly what we have discussed just now,
Right.
the personification of the coal. Now, when we study literature, there are words which give us a certain meaning. There are devices which tells us, this is how it is. So we have looked at two things here, personification, and we have looked at the choice of words which makes this an interesting poem. Okay?
Right.
Right.
Miss Renuka, I have to stop you there first because I think in a way our pupils outside as well are trying to digest that it's not just humans that can be personified, that are personified, but coals can have personification as well with the right words used. And as you can see as well, poems are actually easy to understand as long as you understand the meaning of the whole story. So we'll be right back and ready to discover more on the title Poetry for Minors, and we'll be right back with Miss Renuka, but we're going for a short break, so we'll see you after this.
Okay.
Didik TV KPM. Didik TV KPM.
And you're still with us on Didik TV KPM's slot for upper secondary level. And today we're learning English literature, and we're focusing on poetry minors. And just now, Miss Renuka, who's our lovely teacher today, has told us that in order to know and learn about the specific poem, we have to know the background of the poet, the poem itself, and analyze what the poem is trying to tell us. So just now we were focusing on the poem itself, and Miss Renuka, we've reached the second stanza actually.
Right.
Okay, we can continue with our lesson.
All right, very good. Thank you, Shafika. Okay, so earlier we looked at personification.
Right.
Now we are going to look at another literary device which makes the poem outstanding. Okay, all right. So before that, let's just look at this stanza. I listened for a tale of leaves and smothered ferns, frond forests and the low sly lives before the fawns. Okay, so you see the sound is there, listened. We see now a lot of S sounds, listened, leaves, ferns, forests, sly, lives, fawns.
Is there a reason for that?
Yes, there is a reason for it. So he has made it such that we are now hearing sounds. Just like how the whispers had come earlier, now we are hearing different sounds. And how he makes these sounds possible is by using the S words as well as the F words.
F
We have
words.
got ferns, frond, forests. No S for frond, yeah? Okay, fronds. It's actually frond, forest.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Before, fawns. Now, all these, when we have a repetition of all these sounds, we call this an alliteration.
Alliteration.
So by using alliteration, what the poet does is he tells us the tales of old. So the coals are still telling us the story of how they were formed. You know, many centuries ago, how they were formed, how the leaves and ferns in the forests have all turned into coal. Okay,
Right.
and this is done through the use of alliteration, which gives us an idea of something which is stealthy. Silently, it has creeped upon us through the use of the S and the F sounds, yeah, and we get a feeling that there must be a secret in how they were formed, and this is what the coals are doing, telling us its story.
Okay, interesting.
Right. So, what is the device which has been used to tell this?
Alliteration.
Alliteration. Very good.
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you,
okay.
Ms. Renuka.
Now, we go into the third stanza. Yeah. My fire might show steam phantoms simmer from time's old cauldron before the birds made nests in summer or men had children. Okay. Now, what is the story here? So we see how the speaker tells us there are other possible tales that he expects the coals to tell us. It is not just a tale of how the coals were formed, but rather there is something else that he is going to say. And here, the stress is on the word time.
Time.
Okay? Time. Okay, let me check if my girls know this.
Okay.
Why do you think he has stressed on time here? Anyone?
Anyone would like to try?
Okay, why has he stressed on time? Yes,
Okay.
Anusha.
Anusha?
I think it's to create a sense of mystery and mysticism in the
Yes.
poem.
Okay, all right. Maybe it is to create a sense of mystery, mysticism, yeah, and the word time comes together with cauldron. You see, a
Right.
cauldron is actually a big pot.
For the
And
witches.
Yes,
Where they
exactly, for
brew,
witches. Yes, that's
potions
right.
and stuff like that.
Okay. And imagine, as the cauldron, as the whatever is
It's being
inside
boiled?
begins to boil,
Right.
it bubbles, from it comes out steam. Yeah? Okay, and we will see in the next stanza
Okay.
how this steam forms apparitions.
I
Okay?
see.
All right. Now, Anusha mentioned the word time. Maybe it is to give us a sense of mysticism. Okay? But more than that, when he says, before the birds made nests in summer or men had children.
So it was way back.
Yes, very good. This is once again instilling the idea of that period of time long ago, before we were even there.
You're
We
right.
humans were even there walking on earth. So the coals were already being formed during that period of time.
Right. Ms. Renuka, I also noticed while it's being highlighted, time is being used as a noun there as well.
Yes, exactly. All
Right. So that's the whole theme of this stanza.
Correct, that's
Okay.
right.
All
Okay, good. You're very astute, Shafika. Well done. Okay.
Okay.
Now let's look into the next stanza, stanza 4. But the coals were murmuring of their mind, and moans down there, boys that slept rise sleep, and men writhing for air. Okay, so notice these words: but, murmuring, moans, rise sleep, writhing for air. Yeah, remember what I said. What makes a poem is actually the words which the poet uses. So there must be a purpose why he uses these words. But before we look into it, let's see what is the idea in this synopsis.
Right.
Okay? So what he's implying to us is that the coals are telling us other tales of boys, of men, who worked in the mines, and it was not an easy life, it was a difficult life. And can you imagine if there is a colliery disaster, what would happen? These people would be trapped in the mines.
Yes.
So can you imagine how young boys slept right sleep, could hardly sleep, disturbed sleeps, distorted. In fact, if a disaster were to happen, their bodies would be one on top of the other, totally distorted.
Yes.
And if a disaster were to happen, the gases, the fumes which come out would trap these people within the mine, and there would be people writhing for air.
That's
155 men, of which 44 were children, were trapped. And in your mind's eye, imagine how it would have been.
Yes.
Boys.
Miss Renuka, I can imagine how difficult it must have been, because nowadays rescuing people who are trapped under coal disasters is hard.
Yeah.
So imagine back then when there was no technology, and how long they would have waited down there, and perhaps those injured as well.
Right.
And when you have, well, like you said, the coals and the structure of the mine field, trapping the air passageway, so that's going to make them suffocate.
Exactly. And this is a fact which it happened, and it took approximately 12 months to extract all these bodies
12
out.
months?
Yes.
Wow.
12 months.
It's a long time.
All right. Okay. Now, I would like to ask this question, because you see the word but is there.
Right.
Okay. Can one of you girls tell me why he begins with the word but? What is he trying to tell us?
Okay. Who would like to answer
Who would like
this
to
one?
answer this? Come. Why does he start? Honey, can you tell me why does he start with the word but?
All right, honey.
It's to say that it's not about the tale of leaves or ferns like what he made it seem like it was, but it's a more serious matter. It's about the sacrifice of miners and soldiers.
Okay, very good, honey. It is actually to show us a change in tone.
Right.
Yeah, when previously it was a tone of sadness, a tone of melancholy, a tone of reverie, but now it has changed, and we see that he begins to use a tone of frustration, which seems to be coming out, and slowly, with the frustration, there are pent-up feelings of anger, and he has moved from a story of the coals. He says, this is what the coals have seen, how people have died in the mines.
Right.
Okay? And the words murmuring, moans, rise, sleep, writhing for air, they give you this effect of, the torture that they would have undergone.
Very strong words there.
Yes. Okay. Now, from that, we move on into stanza 5. And I saw, the I here is the speaker himself, Wilfred Owen. He says, and I saw white bones in the cinder shard, bones without number, meaning so many bones, numerous bones, white bones. White bones means what? Is there
Without
flesh
the
in it?
flesh, no.
Yes, good. No flesh, fleshless bones, just the bones. So many bones, you cannot even count the number of bones which are there.
Right.
For many hearts with coal are charred, and few remember. Notice the conjunctions and. Earlier it was but to show a contrast.
Yeah.
And here, the two ends here tell us it's a continuity of idea. This is what I've seen, and this is what is going to happen. This is how it's going to be.
Right.
Yeah, so there's no stop to it. And. Okay, continuity of ideas. So in this stanza, what he does is he shifts to the first person when he uses the word I. So the speaker here, which is Wilfred Owen himself, recalls seeing the white bones in hot fragments of partly burned coal.
Right.
Okay? And in this stanza, actually, he is not just talking about the miners, he is gently moving on into his own experiences as a soldier.
Right.
Yeah? Okay, so we see a flashback of his war service, whereby he had seen numerous bones of his friends, his comrades, or even the enemies. He had seen this. And that is why, remember, he was treated for shell shock. It's not easy to fathom seeing these things in front of you.
Right, Ms. Renuka. And I believe the last sentence, even with 3 words there, he is saying that he's taking a step into his own experience, being shell-shocked from the war.
Yes.
So I believe poems have a way of doing that, where there's only a few words, but you can get it to flash back to a moment later or after.
Excellent.
Right.
Yes, exactly. And you see, using these words, you can see the pent-up frustration within him slowly coming out.
Right, Ms. Renuka. Okay, we'll be continuing with stanza 6 right after this break. But to flash back on what we've learned so far, we've learned from stanza 1 and until 5, and we've learned about how to personify certain elements like calls and using alliteration to emphasize on your meanings and also a stress in time. And also, as I noticed, it grows into a more serious and deeper tone towards every stanza.
Exactly.
All right, pupils, I hope you enjoyed that session. We're going to go for a short break. Right after this, we're going to continue. So we'll see you right back on Didik TV KPM.
Didik TV KPM. Didik TV KPM.
Okay, pupils, let's go back to class. We're learning English literature today with Miss Renuka and with our topic today, which is poetry on minors. And just now we've reached stanza 5, which, like I said before, from stanza 1 to stanza 5, it gets deeper and deeper as we go along. So right now we've reached stanza 6, the second last of the third last of the whole poem. All right, Miss Renuka, let's move ahead.
Okay, thank you, Shafika. So now let's look at stanza 6. I thought of some that worked dark pits of war and died digging the rock where death reputes peace lies indeed. Okay, a little bit tricky in the choice of words. Yeah, so here we can see how Owen puts himself into the situation as one of the soldiers who had seen how many soldiers of war had died while digging the rock. The digging the rock here is with reference to digging the underground tunnels during World War I. Okay, and when he uses words like where death reputes peace lies indeed, again the idea of using personification is seen, whereby death and peace, two contradictory things, two contrasting things, they are there together in the last 2 lines of this stanza. Okay, now when he says death reputes peace lies indeed, what he's actually trying to say is, you know, in this underground tunnels, whether it is the mines or whether it is the underground tunnels during World War I, yeah, chances of you dying, the chances are very high. And that's something which can happen. And what happens when you die? You get eternal peace. So that is why he has got the idea of how people had died digging the rock where death reputes, where death is to be, peace lies there, you know, and you would hope to have peace to end your pain and suffering that you go through. So again, the choice of words, the personification of death and peace, clearly shown here. Now, the next one that we have in stanza 7. Comforted ears will sit soft-chaired in rooms of amber. The years will stretch their hands, well cheered by our life's ember. I'm going to look at 2 things here. First one here is comforted years. This is in reference to people in future years will sit comfortably in soft chairs in front of the hearth. And therefore, he uses the word amber, which gives a warm glow, a sense of security, a sense of warmth as you sit there. But in the next 2 lines, he says, the years will stretch their hands, meaning years and years from now, many years, whether it is tens of years, hundreds of years, but the years will stretch. That means it's a time in the future.
Right.
Whoever sits there will be enjoying themselves. Yeah, because you are sitting in front of the fire, the hearth. You are sitting in front of it. Now, the second use of ember gives you the idea of the bones which have been charred, or even the coals which have been charred. So we see a contrast between ember, warmth, and the second ember, death. Okay, so he has cleverly used color contrasts, color imagery to show this to us. Okay, and moving on, let's go on into the last stanza when he says, the centuries will burn rich loads with which we groaned. So in future years, people would be burning these golds, but nobody would ever think of the miners who groaned to bring out these coal, okay, whose warmth, the warmth of the coals will lull people's dreaming lids while songs are crooned. So people will be enjoying themselves, but no one will ever think of the poor miners who sacrificed their lives for the comfort of people in the future. But, see the word but. People will do all these things, happy, they are safe, they are secure, they are warm, but will they remember us? So he uses but. But they will not dream of us. And he has put himself into it. I am a soldier. Those are the miners. We all sacrificed our lives for you, for your comfort. But will you remember us? No way. But they will not dream of us poor lads lost in the ground. So they will not remember the miners, they will not remember the soldiers, and that is where we can see clearly how angry, frustrated he is, that future years will happen, but nobody will ever think of what they had done for your comfort and your safety.
It appears as if Owen knew that somehow his poem would eventually reach the future generation, but he was frustrated with the idea that they don't understand, they don't see what actually happened. But I guess from reading the whole stanzas of this poem, I think it gives us a whole picture of what happened, even with a few lines. And also, I believe Owen believed in a brighter future, in a happier future because of his poem as well. Despite during his time, everything was suffering, everything was pain. So I believe for our students online, I hoped you got all the stanzas in and understood what every lines meant and how it developed into stronger meanings. All right, Ms. Renuka, we've reached the end of this show, but before we end the show, can you give a bit of a conclusion for our overall lesson today? All right, so what we have looked at here are these things, okay? So we have looked at these aspects, yeah? We have looked at the language, form, and the structure of the poems. We have looked at how words make a strong meaning to the poem. So my advice to you, because you are SPM students, you are going to study for the exams, these are the things that you should look out for. Make sure you know all your poems, there are 10 poems, know all your 10 poems very well. Analyze them thoroughly. Look at the language, look at the poetic devices, and most importantly, you should be able to say, what is the purpose of using these words? What is the purpose of using the poetic devices? Don't just say, oh, he has used personification, he has used repetition. No, you don't just give that to me. Go beyond that. Tell me why he has used it. What is it trying to tell us? Okay? Know the themes of the poems, like this poem is mainly about sacrifice, the suffering, pain, and dying. Know these themes because these themes will be related to your answer. And most importantly, make sure you answer according to the needs of the question. So if the question tells you, explain to me why there are similarities, so you show
why there are similarities and not just say, oh, there are similarities and the similarities are like this. No, you must give that purpose. Why are there similarities?
Right, Ms.
Okay,
Renuka. And
so
yes,
that's
go
it.
on. Oh, that's
Yes.
it. Okay. All right, as you said as well, there's no wrong or right in analysing poems as long as you have evidence towards your answers. All right, Ms. Renuka, for our pupils online, perhaps you can give an overall evaluation of their performance today.
Oh, okay.
In marks, maybe.
Right, okay, very
Right.
good. Okay, if you had all been listening, what I have done is I did not do an assessment at the beginning or at the end.
Okay.
I did it continuously, and continuously the girls were giving me their responses, which means out of 5, I would definitely give them a 5.
A
And they have
5.
done
Good
very
job,
well.
pupils online. Clap, a round of a clap for yourself. And also, Ms. Renuka, for extra exercises for our pupils at home, where can they go?
Okay, at present the materials are being uploaded into Sumberku. Yeah, so I think by the end of this month you should be able to access the materials from there. You can also get notes, from the internet. Just source out Minors by Wilfred Owen, get different insights of how people analyze the poems, and I think that should be able to help you a lot.
Yes, Ms. Renuka, I believe it helps a lot of pupils outside as well. And as shown on screen just now, don't forget to go to Sumberku through our Portal Delima. All right, we'll be ending the show now. Thank you, Ms. Renuka, for spending time with us and teaching us valuable lessons for poems today. We'll be right back on upper secondary level slots another time. But until then, Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera, bye-bye.